Bloodborne 2 getting announced today. Yeah, Bloodborne on PC is getting announced today, and Bloodborne 2 is getting announced. They're not only announcing Bloodborne 2, but they're announcing Bloodborne on PC finally. Yeah. Veteran's getting even more psychotic. Yeah. Anyway, there's some good news in the union world. More than 1,000 Volkswagen workers in Tennessee have signed union rep cards, according to the UAW. It's infectious, ladies and gentlemen. Beautiful news, wonderful news. That makes me very excited. That makes me very happy. So that's cool. Chattanooga, Tennessee plant. 1,000 factory workers have already signed union authorization cards. Last week, the UAW said it was launching a first-of-its-kind push to publicly organize the entire non-union auto sector in the U.S. after winning record new contracts with the Detroit 3 automakers. The UAW, which said 30% of the workers of the Volkswagen plant had signed cards, has outlined its organizing strategy that it says if 30% of workers at a non-union plant sign cards seeking to join, it would make that public. Volkswagen, which employs about 3,800 at the plant that produces Passat and Atlas, did not respond to the request for comment. Uh-oh. Not good for them, it seems, but great for the workers in general. So congratulations. Hopefully this passes through. If 50% of the workers seek to join, the UAW would hold a rally with the UAW President Sean Fain to tout the effort. They're going to execute, my boy. Something always to consider is that Volkswagen, a German auto manufacturer, automaker, has not only full unionization in Germany, but also on top of that has a structure where a leadership council of workers that are democratically elected end up having, I believe, at least 50% of the vote, or at least 50% of the say in the board. So one must ask themselves, why is it that the German automaker does not have a similar structure here in the United States of America, the greatest country on the planet, the wealthiest nation on the planet, the wealthiest nation in the history of mankind? What's up with that? Why don't we have something even resembling remotely the same process that they have in Germany for German workers for a German automaker? Think about that. Yet another byproduct of the United States of America treating its own labor force, its own American labor force, as cannon fodder, easily exploitable. Great stuff overall. Makes me really think about that long and hard. They also made the Beetle, the Volks car, the Hitlerian car. Listen, I can't speak too much shit on Volkswagen. I used to have a Jetta, which was like a go-kart. I drove that shit down into the ground. I also own a Porsche, which is, under the same auto group. And also, it's just they were feeling patriotic when they made those cars. You know what I mean? What are you going to do? Just saying. In the United States of America, we are sick and tired of being exploited. The United States of America is a developing nation. Sick and tired of first world countries like Germany coming in to a country like the United States of America and exploiting our labor force like this. One must rise up and seize the means of production. Fellas. Thoughts on people who say Porsche? Yeah, I don't really care about that. I am probably the most non-Porsche owner, ass Porsche owner on the planet. You won't catch me wearing something that has you won't catch me saying Porsche. That's number one. Hey, Majority Report, thank you for the raid. Hope you had a good stream. You will never catch me calling it Porsche. You will never catch me wearing Porsche branded shit. Okay? I won't go to the Porsche events. They happen all the time. They invite me all the goddamn time. My brother loves that shit. I have been known to drink some Porsche water, though. That is true. You got me on that one. Whenever I go to the dealership, I do get me a bottle of Porsche branded water, and I find it very funny, and I will drink out of it. But yes, let's take a look at this. We're Volkswagen. We're UAW. We are ready to stand up. I love that Sean Fain said UAW stands for You Are Welcome.
15 years ago, Volkswagen came to Tennessee. It meant a lot to our community. It meant a lot to us. We knew that in Germany and around the world, VW jobs meant good jobs. We knew that in Kentucky and Texas, and right here in Tennessee, auto jobs meant secure jobs. But in the past 15 years, that's not what we got here in Chattanooga. The pay isn't keeping up. The benefits aren't what they should be. The question isn't why do auto workers at Volkswagen across the world get a better deal than us in Tennessee? And the question isn't why do GM workers in Spring Hill or Ford workers in Louisville get a better life? The question is, why don't we? For years, we've tried to leave this place better than we found it. We've tried to stand up for our coworkers, for our families, for Chattanooga. And for years, the company and their big money allies have tried to keep us down. But times have changed, and our time is now.
There's no question that the workers won here. These are major, major gains that, well, auto workers have not seen in decades.
Auto workers at Volkswagen and Chattanooga are ready to stand up. That's why we're announcing that over 1,000 of us have signed our union cards, and we're telling the world we're VW, we're UAW, and we're ready. Auto workers across the country are ready to fight for a better life, a better job, a better future. We're ready to stand up and join the UAW, and we're asking you to stand with us.
Yeah, nice, good stuff. So the thing is, Volkswagen, or at least like the original works council that exists under the VW framework, is supposed to also demonstrate international solidarity regularly, like with other workers around the world. It's also funny because like there's literally an act. The Volkswagen Act is a set of originally West German federal laws enacted in 1960 regulating the privatization of Volkswagen Work into the Volkswagen Group. In order to maintain government control in the privately owned company, it stipulated that the votes in major shareholder meetings resolutions requires 4/5, 80% agreement. This part of the law was deemed to violate the free movement of capital principle of the European Union corporate law. After a series of challenges from 2017 to 2013, the German parliament finally amended the part in 2013 to the EU Court of Justice satisfaction. The full title of the law is Gesetz über die Überführung der Anteilrechte an der Volkswagen Gesellschaft mit beschränkter Haftung in Privathand, usually abbreviated to VW Gesetz. Dude, that is the least mouthy German law. Have you guys ever heard? Do you know how to say NetzDG? Do you know what NetzDG is? The anti-hate speech law? The Network Enforcement Act, known as the Network Enforcement Act. Have you ever tried saying it? Netzwerkdurchsetzungsgesetz. Gesetz zur Verbesserung der Rechtedurchsetzung in sozialen Netzwerken. Sozialen Netzwerken. They need to figure that shit out. I know I make fun of the Dutch quite regularly for having the funniest made-up language. But, like, maybe Germans need to Dutch it up a little bit, okay? So, yeah. Volkswagen has had, like, decently protectionist principles. They have work councils. They have significantly better workers' protections for German workers than they do for what the fuck was I gonna say? Oh, I was just reading on like the Brazil coup. They just have better worker protections for themselves for German workers than they do for workers everywhere else, which is messed up. I think that it's time to stop that now. Okay. Time to stop that now. The Volkswagen Chattanooga assembly plant, as a matter of fact, 2014 also proposed that employees elect the union in order to implement a works council that has co-determination, consultation, and participation rights with management. They attempted to unsuccessfully unionize the plant in 2014. This was defeated in a 712 to 626 vote. The unionization effort was backed by Volkswagen management and the IG Metall union in Germany. There was, however, considerable opposition from U.S. business groups and Republican politicians. Despite a failed unionization vote at the plant, Volkswagen recognized members who have joined UAW Local 42. After the closed vote against the UAW, Volkswagen announced a new policy allowing groups representing at least 15% of the workforce to participate in meetings with higher access tiers for groups representing 30 to 45% of its employees. This prompted anti-UAW workers who opposed the first vote from a rival union, the American Council of Employees. In December 2014, the UAW was certified as representing more than 45% of the employees. The UAW attempted to unionize the plant again in June 2019. This failed by a 52 to 48% margin. Unlike in 2014, Volkswagen management was not supportive of the union vote this time around. There it is. So, a little bit of background, a little bit of history of Volkswagen unionization efforts in the Chattanooga, Tennessee plant, for those of you who are wondering. TikTok Agitprop, workers' benefits in the Germany.
Even the best job in the United States doesn't meet the bare minimum requirements for employment in Germany. If you work in the US, imagine your dream working benefits. Maybe you never have to work more than 40 hours per week. After a year, you have 3 weeks paid vacation, 6 weeks paid maternity leave, 3 weeks of sick days, and really good health insurance that you can afford. That wouldn't even meet the bare minimum in Germany. First, in Germany, there is no at-will employment. Every job has to have some kind of contract that can't just be terminated because your employer feels like it. There's a cap on working hours at 40 hours per week on average, a minimum of 20 days paid vacation, 6 weeks of sick days per year in a row. Maternity leave is fully paid 6 weeks before you give birth and 8 weeks after. And this doesn't even include the benefits we don't really even imagine in the States. Your employer has no right to contact you after working hours. 3 years parental leave. And a lot of the companies that are operating in the US are also operating in Germany just fine.
So there is a little bit of, as far as I understand, there's some level of like neoliberalization maybe going on as well in the Volkswagen workers councils in Germany too. Overall, like I said, still better than the American labor unions and their or not better than the American labor unions, but still certainly better than the benefits that American workers have in comparison to German workers. I'm quitting today to became manager, lied, and there's no holiday party after working Thanksgiving. That's why you're quitting. A lot of unions are fucking docile and in general neoliberal, ruining the standards of living, happening rapidly. Yeah. It's just like, it's odd to consider when you compare it. It's odd to consider when you compare like what's going on in America and like the American standards, the American workplace standards in comparison to the German workplace standards. Obviously, like Germany is significantly better. However, even in Germany, in comparison to the benefits that the German labor unions have been able to historically advocate for, the situation is dire there as well. This is a phenomena happening all across the world and certainly in Europe too. One that I think spells doom for the supposed European liberal democracy that everybody holds to such a high esteem. But I mean, I don't really care about stuff like this. Germany's freedom ranking has been downgraded in a review from open to restricted due to the repression of pro-Palestinian as well as climate activists. Like, the freedom rankings, quote unquote, are really stupid, liberal. Like those are always like CIA ops almost. But I mean, it does say something when even like a neoliberal institution that's like engaging in a freedom ranking is downgrading you because of the way that you're behaving towards your own citizens. But yeah, Germany's been a different way for some time now, it feels. Exactly. We're literally bad out, but America's so incredibly worse, it skewers the metric. That is a part of it. That's one comparison, but Germany should compare itself to its previous years rather than compare itself to one of the worst capitalist shitholes on the fucking planet that is simply propped up by technological improvements and the idea that we have 800 military bases around the world, so it simply does not matter. And that we're good, actually. Everything is great. You have McDonald's. So what happened with the SAG-AFTRA vote? Only 38% voter turnout. That's normal. A lot of the union was not necessarily very happy with the contract. There was a lot of criticism with the contract, but it's still ratified nonetheless. There were not the same level of controls over artificial intelligence and its usage in the SAG-AFTRA one, as far as I understand. Talked to a lot of actors. For example, the unemployment benefits are 450 euros a month, and just rent alone. From those 450 euros a month, you have to pay electricity, 100 for me monthly, internet, Netflix, Spotify, food, clothing, everything, 450 a month. Yeah. There was another really good ad as well with the hands one, right? This one's good too. Like I said, always adjust your standards. Always adjust your standards to where your material conditions are when you are analyzing a country. Don't simply just make a comparison that is much worse to make yourself seem better off overall. And obviously, never stop being ambitious about emancipation. Never stop being ambitious about getting workers more benefits and more rights and more liberties in general and more autonomy. Because the reality is, you can always turn around and go, hey, you're saying that the American workplace conditions are bad, but have you seen the conditions in a mine in Congo? Like, yeah, there's always going to be a race to the bottom, but that's not the American way. We are not supposed to be engaging in a race to the bottom. We're supposed to be constantly trying to lead the way and be number one. I thought that we fancied ourselves to be number one. You know.
These hands.
These hands.
These hands.
These hands punch the clock.
These hands work the lines.
These hands build the cars.
And every dollar in profit these companies make
is made by these hands.
Whether at Toyota,
Hyundai,
Mercedes,
Volkswagen,
Rivian.
America's auto workers are at a crossroads.
When the big three auto companies refuse to share their record profits.
auto workers got to organize.
For over 40 days and nights,
Auto workers at Ford, GM, and Stellantis held the line and won big.
There's only one question facing America's auto workers now. Who's got next?
These hands don't belong to any company.
They don't belong to GM.
They don't belong to Toyota.
They don't belong to Tesla.
these hands belong to an auto worker.
And these hands will determine what happens next.
This is our generation's defining moment.
Either we organize and stand up for ourselves,
Or we keep falling further behind.
Either we fight for a decent standard of living,
Or we sit down and shut up.
As long as we're divided, we're weak.
but united, we can move mountains.
It's time for auto workers from all companies to join together.
from Illinois,
To Alabama,
From Mercedes
To Toyota.
It's time to stand up.
all of us
As United Auto Workers.
It's great. Good stuff. Great fucking, that is a great ad. Yeah, we're going to talk about some sad news in a second. Rafat, who I have utilized a lot of his work so far, and you know, his on the ground coverage of the atrocities has unfortunately, as far as I understand, been executed, been killed by the Israeli occupying force. It's really sad. If I must die, you must live, to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite, you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it tell a tale. Sorry, we just I just jumped from some relatively positive news in American domestic politics to something so devastating, but such is the daily life of Palestinians. Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, this is what John Fetterman is posting. 3 Acme markets in Lower Merion had their Sabra hummus products vandalized with stickers including shoppers have boycotted Israeli goods Wednesday, according to a company spokesperson. That's what John Fetterman's doing. That's what he's championing. This was his last tweet, by the way. The Democratic Party and Biden are responsible for the Gaza genocide perpetrated by Israel. Great.
President Biden and I have been clear. Israel has a right to defend itself, and we will remain steadfast in that conviction. President Biden.
So, like, this is why I say, like, you know, Biden goes, so what comes after? What comes after? Kamala Harris? You think she's got different convictions on the matter? I mean, she's nothing but a mouthpiece for the same deadly, devastating, bloodthirsty empire. She's going to do the same shit.
Biden and I have also been clear, as Israel defends itself, it matters how. The United States is unequivocal. International humanitarian law must be respected. Too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Frankly, the scale of civilian suffering and the images and videos coming from Gaza are devastating. As Israel pursues its military objectives in Gaza, we believe Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. President Biden and I have been clear. Israel has...
Yeah. According to latest reports from Haaretz, the original numbers said that 73% of the deaths in Gaza were women, children, and the elderly. Haaretz's new analysis shows that it's reduced down to 63% now. This, of course, doesn't mean that the rest of the people are actually Hamas. It's just, you know, someone like Rafat would be considered in military-aged enemy combatant age group. That doesn't mean he's actually a Hamas member at all. He is yet another person that was monstrously slaughtered in cold blood. Yeah. It also doesn't include the 7,000 missing people who may be killed under the rubble as well. You know, absolute devastation. We didn't learn from 2016, so why are we still going with them? Every election will always be the same. The most important in our lives. Eventually, we need to buck the trend and stop voting for them. There is nothing. The reality is it does nothing. There's nothing you can really do. That's why I always push for extra political or pressure beyond immediate politics, like beyond voting for the president. Yeah, the war cabinet member's son was killed, by the way. Gal Eisenkot, the son of Israeli minister and war cabinet member Gadi Eisenkot, was killed today in the fighting in Gaza, IDF announces. You know, this was Rafat, by the way.
So many Palestinian businesses, so many Palestinian residential buildings. Israel has destroyed homes on the heads of the dwellers as they slept. We talk about so many Palestinian families buried dead, the Shabat family, the Shaban family, the Abu Dagga family. Most of them are kids. In Gaza, there are almost 1 million Palestinian children. Almost 50% of the population of Gaza is children. So in the Shabat family, 9 out of 18 family members were children. Israel annihilated 3 generations in just one American-made bomb.
These are real human beings that whose lives are taken. You know, really sad. I read his poem already. You probably missed it. Okay. So, updates from Gaza. The new method. Couple different things I want to talk about. One, there's the memory post of the elderly Palestinian woman Al Jazeera reported near a Khan Yunis hospital. Hamas takes all the aid to their tunnels and their houses. They can shoot me. I'm not afraid of them. I don't know if there's a mistranslation or not, but memory usually it does engage in some level of mistranslations in this situation. In situations like this, this could be correct though. We'll take a look at it. You have Israel doing Abu Ghraib style mechanisms, torture or humiliation, mass dragnets being implemented, calling them all Hamas militants. Every single person that they have collectively arrested. We're going to be talking about that. And last but not least, Israel is considering flooding all the tunnels. They've actually started flooding some of the tunnels. They want to flood all of the tunnels under Gaza with seawater, which of course would further devastate Gaza in general, destroy everything on top of it. A lot of these buildings that haven't been collapsed yet with rocket fire would absolutely be collapsed at that point. It would also have a horrible effect. It would, as far as I understand it, it would destroy the aquifers, the natural water supply that they have. They've already started doing it. I mean, it's a weird thing. Al Jazeera Plus director identified one of the arrested, by the way. There's a couple people that have actually identified people in this crowd. Among these Palestinians, we recognize journalist Dia Al-Kahlout. He could not move down south because he has an elderly mother and a child with disability. Of course, Israel will tell you that they're all terrorists. Another person recognized a friend in the crowd as well. Yanis Varoufakis was talking about this earlier. I think I retweeted it. Where the fuck is it? Oh, this is Dia Kahlout. Yeah. I begged him to leave, move south, but he replied he could not leave his disabled daughter and old mother, Rami Abdu said. He's the Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor, speaking out his friend Dia Kahlout, kidnapped by the Israeli army in Gaza, along with many other civilians. So, Reuters finally conducted an investigation into the Israeli tank fire that killed their own journalist, Issam Abdallah, and wounded 6 reporters in Lebanon on October 13th by firing 2 shells in quick succession as the journalist filmed cross-border shelling, Reuters investigation found. Very different tone that they're taking from when he was originally martyred by Israel in the beginning of October. But this is usually how it goes. Months later, as the atrocities pile on, it no longer matters as much. It no longer matters as much because, you know, we have new atrocities to shift our focus onto. We will be covering. I will be looking through all of the. I'll be looking through all the each individual. Like whatever the assessment they have so far of all the people that Israel has rounded up. But here is the Hamas tunnel
Troops
situation
say they're
so
making
far. I'm going to go
advances
pee really
against
quickly.
Hamas in Gaza, killing its field commanders. The military releasing new video overnight of soldiers on foot on the attack. And fresh airstrikes. Military officials tell NBC News troops are finding and destroying hundreds of entrances to Hamas tunnels, showing us videos of shafts discovered outside a school.
You see the piers of the tunnel, the Hamas terror tunnel going under the school.
Israel is blowing up the tunnels it locates, and according to U.S. officials, is considering flooding them with seawater. Some of Hamas's hostages may be inside those tunnels. As Israel continues its open-ended military campaign in Gaza, U.S. officials tell NBC News they worry if Israel has a clear exit strategy. The offensive is turning much of the Gaza Strip into a wasteland. An Israeli colonel acknowledged the entire city of Beit Hanun in northern Gaza has been made uninhabitable.
Are Palestinians going to be able to go back to areas that you were clearing?
Well, right now they won't, but if there will be a rehabilitation effort from the international community after deneutralizing the Gaza Strip, then I think it will be possible. Right now, it's not livable.
That means there will be no homes to return to for many of the Palestinians who have fled the north and are now packed into southern Gaza. Moving south has been traumatic for 7 orphans and...
As far as I understand, the remaining space that they are allowing Palestinians to, the remaining space that they consider a safe zone is for approximately 2 million people. And that is the size of Heathrow Airport. Like, they're concentrating the population in a incredibly tiny area. I don't know where I have... I don't know. I don't know where I've heard that before. Just a concentration of sorts.
Disabled children who left a care home in Gaza City. We met Ayas at the start of the war. He's blind and paralyzed. Now he and some of the others are in Han Yunis. His carer is running out of medicine for him. They've already moved 4 times and may have to relocate again as Israel's campaign against Hamas continues to expand.
And right next to that post office is the kibbutz's dining room. And today is the first day of Hanukkah, and they've set up the tables here with people who are not here, including the Bibas family. This is the youngest hostage, and all of his family here at what would have been a holiday meal. Savannah.
Oh, very poignant. Richard, thank you very much.
Hey,
We begin with the latest developments from Israel and Gaza. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned countries on the Security Council that public order in Gaza is likely to completely break down because of Israeli bombardment and the lack of essential supplies. Israel's foreign minister has sharply criticised Mr. Guterres, saying his tenure is a danger to world peace. Well, in the last 24 hours, Israel has carried out more heavy aerial bombardment across Gaza in its fight against Hamas. And the fighting on the ground has intensified in the south, particularly around Khan Yunis. Israeli officials say the IDF has surrounded the home of Hamas's chief, Yahya Sinwar. Well, let's cross live now to Jerusalem and our correspondent Yolande Nell. And Yolande, good to have you on this morning. Antonio Guterres there saying there could be a collapse of public order. Israel's foreign minister, however, sharply criticising that. What is the situation like on the ground, and how likely would you say is this collapse?
Well, certainly, if you look at the fighting that's been going on, first of all, the pictures this morning, you could see smoke was still rising up from the north of the Gaza Strip. But according to one of the main Israeli newspapers here, the Israeli military is now considered that it's got operational control of...
By the way, I want to point something out here. Every time they talk about the full breakdown in Gaza, I follow Hebrew media in Israel, because there's a distinction between Israeli media that is in English versus Israeli media in Hebrew. If you're looking at Israeli media in Hebrew, the primary audience there is the Israeli population, right? And things I've seen so far from Israeli media in Hebrew is they show the collapse and the devastation, but not necessarily by bombs, but they try to make it seem as though the Palestinian people are rebelling against Hamas. They show mistranslations oftentimes of Arabic speakers, claiming that they're basically trying to beef up the argument that their relentless bombing campaign is actually pissing people off and it's working. Remember, the stated goal is they're bombing mercilessly so that the people rebel against Hamas. So now the only times where you see Palestinian people, the only time you see Palestinian people speak is if they are mentioning their discontent in a way that you can massage a narrative into, yeah, they actually hate Hamas. They're just more angry at Hamas than they are at Israel. So that's something to keep in mind. So when you see like a Western version of that, which the Western media does show more of the death and destruction that the Israeli media, the Hebrew Israeli media shows for sure in Gaza. But if you hear stuff like, oh, people are rebelling, there's chaos on the ground, and they are rebelling against Hamas, that is a direct extension of the IDF narrative that you're hearing. It also is one that's familiar to Americans, I hope. If you were old enough to remember the when they will welcome us as liberators narrative that we presented in Israel. You know, the toppling of the Saddam statue. What did I say? In Iraq. What did I say something wrong? What country did I mention? Oh, I said Israel. Oh, my bad. The toppling of the Saddam statue in Iraq, not Israel. Oh my God. I mean, yeah, I literally lived through what you're describing. The Israeli media over here is some of the most infuriating journalistic bullshit ever. Yeah, the Israeli media in Hebrew is also very different than the Israeli media in English. But even then, have you been talking about Israel nonstop for months or something? Yes, I have been. I've been covering these atrocities for almost 3 fucking months. It's day 60 at this point. And if you're wondering why, it's because I've been covering this for the past 10 years since I began my professional media career. And this is one of the first times where the atrocities have actually caused the American public to look at the situation differently. The last time I saw a sea change or an attitude shift of this magnitude was 2021. And the reality is, like, I cover other stuff as well. I mean, I started off the broadcast today talking about Volkswagen, the Chattanooga, Tennessee plant unionizing, and I will, of course, continue covering other things too. But the reality is that, you know, I think that we owe it to the Palestinian people to get the word out as best as we can, considering I think our hands are bloody. Like, these are our bombs that are being dropped upon the Palestinian population. Our weapons, our targeting systems are killing them. Our go-ahead and our celebration is allowing Israel to continue doing whatever the fuck it wants to do. So there are obviously parallels. There are obviously ways in which this also, like, plays a role in undermining American life. One of the things that I've talked about is as I direct the attention back to the United States of America for a brief moment, one of the things I've talked about is that we have also seen McCarthyism run amok. Congress is desperately and very deliberately trying to roll back. I may have missed it, but what about Turkey Tom saying you're lying? I don't know what Turkey Tom is. But I mean, I show my work. I don't know what a Turkey Tom is. I show my work. A lot of people who are right-wing drama farmers who present themselves as centrists, on the other hand, do not. They simply clip stuff out of context and then say that I'm bad and wrong. They're cowards. They do not demonstrate bravery for even a moment of their lives. They regularly omit information. Most of these guys are just interested in the drama and the clout that will come. Not a fair take. What is it? What's unfair? I don't really need to know much other than, you know. They still bring up your cowboy collector chatter drama. Yeah, it's always stuff like that. The thing is, most of the people that make these videos, they have ideological positions. They just don't want to openly reveal them because they're afraid of alienating their audiences. So they try to stand from a centrist position and write stuff or, you know, conduct themselves in a way that is like apolitical. Like, I'm apolitical, but this guy, I might even have to agree with him, but actually I don't. It's silly. It's disingenuous. And that's it. Focus on what's going on in the world instead of, you know, engaging with that sort of thing. Huge fan of you, by the way. Just curious if you've spoken on it, as I can't be there for all the live streams. I have not spoken on drama farmers in the midst of my coverage over an ongoing ethnic cleansing campaign happening with American taxpayer dollars and American go-ahead. No, I have not. If that is your major point of concern here, then maybe this is not the best place to. Maybe this is not the best place for you. I don't know. I mean, hopefully you will. Hopefully those who care about the issues at hand will hyper-focus on the issues at hand rather than people that are trying to farm drama. That has been my goal consistently, is to just, offer a voice to people that are otherwise voiceless. Like I said, you can always test my resources. You can always check my sources. It's easy to just tell a lie about someone. It takes much longer to actually tell the truth. And if you have a problem with the type of sources that I use or my coverage, you can go on your own journey and find out for your own whether or not it is correct. It would require you to do just a little bit of reading for you to come to the conclusion that nothing I have said is untrue. I might have emotional moments from time to time. I might get mad from time to time. These are subjects that I'm covering that are obviously very traumatizing. But ultimately, anyone that tries to say that I am lying to you or am bad, just ask them what their perspective is or where they're getting their information, and you will realize very quickly that they do not have that. They don't have a perspective. They don't even care about what is actually happening. They simply care about clout and drama and the continuation of clout and drama. I think that is really cheap. At least those who are pro-Israel or even pro-genocide have like an ideological position. They have a stake. They have a dog in the fight. They want Israel to keep pummeling Gaza. These guys, on the other hand, look at a genocide that's happening and say, how can I make money off of this for myself personally? Ask them what they've done. This community's raised $1.2 million for Palestinians. What have they done? They raise money for the IDF? Have they raised money for Palestinians? Maybe they should take all of the ad revenue generated and donate it to PCRF, at which point I wouldn't feel so bad about the drama farming and the pathetic debate lording animals.
These two areas, Jabalia in the north and Shuja'iyya in the east of Gaza City, which were considered to be Hamas strongholds. They have been the scene of most fighting in the north. The real attention has gone to Khan Yunis, the biggest city in the south of the Gaza Strip. That's where we've had these very fierce battles going on, we understand, between Israeli forces and Hamas fighters who are holed up there. And Israeli forces saying they're now encircling the house of Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader in Gaza.
This is the other thing that they keep saying, that like they found Yahya Sinwar, they found his house, they've circled his house. I don't know where that's coming from, but I've heard it so many times at this point. Like I don't know what the fuck that's about, but I have heard it a lot. I've heard them say this a lot.
And that is mostly symbolically significant, really, because he and other Hamas leaders who are thought maybe to be in Khan Yunis are really thought to be in underground tunnels hidden well out of the way. But we had Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu coming out saying that this really showed determination. It's only a matter of time before we get him, Mr. Netanyahu said.
And Yolande, just while you're speaking there, viewers have been just seeing the devastation in Khan Yunis and young children walking around looking injured.
What can $1 million do for the people in Gaza? Well, considering the fact that it's all charities that are currently on the ground and operating in Gaza, food, clothing, medical supplies. It's, of course, still a matter of Israel allowing that to go into Gaza to begin with, but some of it has already entered the Strip, so.
A lot of the focus today on the humanitarian situation. Is aid getting to those areas where that fighting is intensifying?
I mean, that's a big complaint of the UN, and we had the UN's aid chief, Martin Griffiths, coming out saying that the situation in Gaza is now apocalyptic. And he was really complaining that because people have been crammed down, they've been told to evacuate even from Khan Yunis. Of course, people originally told to move from the north to the south for their safety. Now people have fled into a small corner in the very south of the Gaza Strip, next to the border with Egypt. People are living on the streets, sleeping rough. There aren't enough shelters to go around, and it's very difficult to both get aid delivered to them there, but also aid delivered then to other parts of the Gaza Strip because of the ongoing fighting, because of road closures as well. And so actually Martin Griffiths saying meaningful humanitarian efforts are now virtually impossible.
And Yolande, just briefly before we go, when it comes to food supplies, medical supplies as well, there's been a huge focus on the hospitals out there trying to treat the wounded. Are we hearing anything about how people are managing to survive?
I mean, when I've spoken to colleagues in the past day, they've told me about how they're surviving just on pieces of bread, how they're trying to find little scraps of wood so that they can light fires to try to heat some food for their children, even if it's just toast. It's a really...
The backlash.
And I before we get into the fucking college anti-Semitism nonsense, okay, anti-Semitism on college campuses and that nonsense, of course, let's talk about what Israel is doing. This hasn't made it to the news yet, at least, you know, because American news kind of follows what's going on in Gaza like a day later. However, Israel has been rounding up men in Khan Yunis, stripping them down to their underwear and detaining them and loading them on trucks. Israel has also claimed that the men that they are rounding up are actually all Hamas militants that have given up. Now, even if these were Hamas militants that have given up, this, of course, is still humiliating and a violation of international humanitarian laws. There are rules of engagement, and then there are rules of what you can and can't do to your prisoners of war. However, I have seen zero evidence from the Israeli side thus far that any of these people are actually Hamas militants, with the exception of Israel saying that they are Hamas militants, of course. The only thing I have seen so far is from some of the friends of the people that are captured in this footage, you know, talking about their background and showing that they are not. Now, some people say that these are men rounded up from North Gaza. Some people are saying that this is men rounded up in Khan Yunis. Unfortunately, unfortunately, there's not enough information so far on any of this stuff. IDF forces arrested dozens of men in an operation in the Gaza Strip during the advance of the forces to occupy the north of the Gaza Strip. The goal is to check if some of them are Hamas terrorists or operatives in the terrorist organization, said Itai Blumenthal from Khan News. This is their public broadcasting corporation admitting that they are not Hamas militants. It's random men and teenagers detained arbitrarily without charges, trial, or legal counsel to check if some of them are Hamas terrorists, meaning civilians are presumed guilty until proven innocent. Itai is saying that they are suspected Hamas operatives. This literally does mean innocent, guilty until proven innocent, by the way. I know that people are trying to claim that this is different. As I've talked about already, these conditions that they are subjected to, for the record, we do not know if this is Khan Yunis or if it's from North Gaza. The suspicion, my suspicion at least, my assumption is that they are most likely from North Gaza, considering that like at least some of the people, including the Al Jazeera comms person, has clarified this guy including Euro-Mediterranean human rights monitor Rami Abdu, have said that this person, at least one of the people identified, is Dia Kahlut, who is, as you can see, is kidnapped by the Israeli occupying force here, along with many other people. And he did not want to leave North Gaza because he could not leave North Gaza because he did not want to leave his disabled daughter and old mother. They geolocated the pharmacy from the sign visible in the photo. Yes. Among those taken hostage today in Beit Laiha are, and this is assistant professor of law and finance chairman from the Euromed Human Rights Monitor. Among those taken hostage today in Beit Laiha are Khalil Hashem Al-Kahlut, 65 years old, Rafiq Ahmad Al-Kahlut, 60 years old, Mohammed Ismail Al-Kahlut, 57 years old, Darwish Garbawi, an UNRWA school director, 48 years old, Ahmed Akram Lubad, 56, UN staff. In addition to the children, there's Mohammed Hamza Al-Kahlut, 15 years old, Yusuf Khaled Lubad, 15 years old. Now, there will be more information that comes out as they identify who these people are. But I believe this is not from South Gaza, but this is from North Gaza, contrary to what this post was. Where is it? Contrary to the original post from, I think it was, Muhammad? Muhammad Shahada that posted that it was in Khan Yunis. Motaz, who is on the ground, also has said that these are people from, these people apprehended in, what do you call it, in North Gaza. Shejaya is in the east of Gaza City, he says. This is responding to Ali London, who said these are Hamas militants these are IDF forces captured members of the Hamas Shejaya battalion in Khan Yunis. The terrorists are one of those main units responsible for October 7 massacres, being responsible for firing hundreds of rockets into Israel. Now, of course, this is Ali London. The fuck does he know? Motaz responds and says, Shejaya is in the east of Gaza City. Khan Yunis is a city inside the Strip. At least before you lie, just try to know about Gaza Strip places. These are civilians from the north of Gaza Strip. Yeah, this has brought up all the fucking worst scumbags around. Yes, Ali is the transracial Korean person that is a right-wing grifter, and before he was a right-wing grifter, he always was a grifter of different sorts. He's always been a perfect demonstration of someone whose brain is melted. Elant News says, I was told this was near Jabalia and Shujaya neighborhood in northern Gaza. They were taken from a refugee location where they were sheltering. I do not believe that they are going to be mass executed, for the record. I know that people are popping off with tweets like this. The civilian men who were kidnapped from the school have been taken to an open field for what looks like an execution lineup. They most likely will not be executed in a lineup. Israel has much better methods of executing thousands of people instead of, putting bullets in the back of their heads. Okay? They will most likely be tortured, interrogated under the suspicion that they are Hamas. Some of them will have torturous, some of those people that are tortured will have confessions, in air quotes, extracted from them via torture, which of course we know is bullshit. But the original information coming out of pro-Israel, the original information coming out of accounts that are pro-Israel was that these were all mass surrendering terrorists, Hamas terrorists in Khan Yunis. It seems like that's not the case. And the reason why I thought that it was Khan Yunis is because the early reports on it were all pro-Israeli accounts saying that these guys are all terrorists and that they're all this was an apprehension that happened in Khan Yunis. But no, I do not believe that they are going to be summarily executed. but I do believe that they will most likely be tortured. Here's what according to Manny Fabian, IDF spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, comments on the photo showing Israeli troops detaining dozens of Palestinian men in the Gaza Strip today. Jabalia and Shajaya are centers of gravity for terrorists. We are fighting them. They are hiding underground and come out. We fight them. Whoever is left in those areas, they come out from the tunnel shafts and some from the buildings, and we investigate who is linked to Hamas and who isn't. We arrest them all and interrogate them, Hagari says in response to a question at a press conference. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a dragnet. Okay? No predictions, lol W. What do you mean? This is the major issue with people who do not have any kind of ideological or any kind of interest in like the actual matters on the ground. They don't realize that like me saying no, I do not think that these people are going to be summarily executed and rounded up is actually not something that is like anti-Israel at all. If anything, if I was interested in simply doing pro-Palestinian propaganda and serving you misinformation, I would look to something like this and go, yeah, these guys are all going to get executed. The problem is many people that come in here to talk shit do not actually have any interest in what is truthful, both within my coverage or at all. They are morally and intellectually incurious charlatans. Do you have evidence to show that Hamas militants that were captured in Israel after October 7th are being tortured? What proof that Hamas militants were captured in Israel are being tortured? There is a litany of TikToks. Not only are there interrogation videos that you can watch, right? And almost all of those interrogation videos are extracted under torturous conditions. But also on top of that, TikTok. Because the Israeli occupying force does not feel like the dehumanization that they subject Palestinians to is like completely inappropriate in the eyes of the, civilized world, they very openly have created a TikTok trend, not only torturing Hamas or what they claim to be Hamas, but openly torturing Palestinians living in the West Bank that are not Hamas at all, that they post on TikTok openly and celebrate it and mock them. Like they do that already. But there's also a tremendous amount of evidence, well-documented evidence from Israeli human rights organizations, Palestinian human rights organizations that have shown that like IDF loves torturing Palestinians in detention. Yeah. Here's one article from November 8th. Horrifying cases of torture and degrading treatment of Palestinian detainees amid spike in arbitrary arrests. You can, if you are genuinely a curious person, and many people that come in here are actually not, but I'm going to assume that you are. I'm going to be charitable. You can find this information on your own as well. So, Netanyahu, if Hezbollah chooses to start a war, it will turn Beirut and South Lebanon into Gaza and Khan Yunis, admitting genocide and threatening to start another genocide. Typical. I assume this is... Yeah, fuck, this doesn't have any translation on it. I don't know. I don't know how to translate that. Insane to me how charitable you are to people that show no charity towards you. I have to do that because if I don't do that, there are plenty of random people that tune in every day, and they might have an open mind, but then they probably think these guys are simply asking normal questions and not like very deliberately coming from a place of bad faith with the interest of derailing. So I have to be as charitable as possible to those who are even not remotely charitable to me. It is frustrating, but it doesn't matter. Let's stay on topic. So yeah. We talked about Rafat already. Very sad state of affairs. And why am I talking about all of this? Because, well, one, this is going to be big news tomorrow, and you want to get ahead of this stuff before it mass releases into mainstream media with a ridiculous lens and a ridiculous framing. There's nothing wrong with asking evidence for claims. You're absolutely correct. The only problem is that the evidence for claims, like I mean, you are literally the reason why I try to be as charitable as possible to people asking these questions, because I assume that it's there are going to be random people that come in here and literally think, oh, this guy is asking for evidence of claims. The issue is you can also find it. You can also find it on your own if you do not trust my research on the matter, if you don't trust my sources on the matter. A lot of this stuff is very well documented, and you could find it on your own, And as a matter of fact, if you're not interested in my coverage in real time, and it is, Scuff Seal is correct, it is cynical. You can watch the YouTube videos after the fact, because on my YouTube channel, we upload a lot of my coverage, and it is usually very condensed. And in that, when I'm doing the coverage, my editors will add the sources that I am drawing from, which you can also find on your own as well. However, if you're interested in it, if you're interested in, just like a quick 17-minute snapshot instead of watching the 8-hour stream, I highly suggest you watch my YouTube channel, and you can look at the sources there. But yes, it seems as though these are, even according to Israel's own broadcasters, even including the information that we have seen thus far from people that know some of the people that have been apprehended, it seems as though these are not all Hamas militants in the way that they have been presented as Hamas militants. And yeah, it's just a dragnet, a violation, yet another violation of human rights, which is not surprising. Are you familiar with the concept of sea lining? Yes. See, now my charitability will run short when you look at the evidence and then you turn around and you say, well, I did see some evidence of one-off occasions, but I'm not sure this is a systematic thing. My friend, Google is your friend in this circumstance. Okay? You can absolutely Google all of this stuff. Okay? At a certain point, I'm not serving as your own personal ChatGPT. You probably should investigate it a little bit further, but I'm beginning to feel like you're not genuinely interested in the truth, but instead you're just simply asking questions in an effort to derail. But it's not even derailment that you are after. It's also to try and make it seem as though I'm actually being disingenuous or framing the situation with fake information. Now, of course, you have not proven anything. You're just simply trying to chip away at my patience. I think you should probably Google this stuff on your own. I mean, people are doubting the sexual abuse from Hamas militants on October 7th and asking for evidence for that all the time. So I'm the same for claims on the other side. This is actually a wonderful false equivalence that you've presented. The level of evidence, the standard of evidence for systemic torture and humiliation, sexual humiliation, and humiliation in general for Palestinian detention is actually incredibly high. There is so much evidence. You've actually seen some of the evidence that I've shown you right before your eyes, as a matter of fact, when I showed you mass detention and a dragnet cast upon a civilian population that were humiliated, stripped of their clothes, sitting on the ground. This, in and of itself, is a violation. You cannot do that. That is also sexual humiliation. You might not agree with that, but that is the case. So if you look at that and you go, well, I'm looking directly at the evidence and I'm thinking maybe it's a one-off situation, while simultaneously turning around and saying, well, I'm just simply asking questions and I want evidence of Hamas's atrocities. People are doubting the sexual abuse from Hamas, which I'm not. I've said that rape has been used as a weapon of war. This is not, of course, a justification for it in any capacity whatsoever, and there's a likelihood that sexual assaults did occur on October 7th. However, the evidence presented for it, unironically, is significantly less. So your expectation here, the evidence presented for it is significantly less than the evidence that you can see with your own two eyes. As far as torture goes. So it doesn't seem to me like you're asking questions. I think it seems to me like you're just simply here to act like you are curious in a way to cast doubt on the coverage. But I digress. Doubt is not necessarily a bad thing. I know. It's just the weaponization of doubt is bad, I think. Yeah, speaking of evidence, by the way, 2 days ago, if you recall, U.S. State Department official Matthew Miller made insane, erroneous claims. Erroneous claims that even the IDF has actually criticized the U.S. State Department over. One of such claims was the false assertion, the completely made-up assertion that perhaps Hamas was not releasing female prisoners because it was raping them. Okay? The IDF, according to Times of Israel, said that the hostages, the state of the hostages, and the coverage and the discourse of the state of hostages in the Western media has become irresponsible and inaccurate. This after the U.S. State Department official Matthew Miller suggested that Hamas held back female hostages to stop them from speaking out about what had been done to them. Okay? I didn't get why the IDF criticized that. Why? They always make up ridiculous stuff. I don't know why they came out and publicly issued this correction. I believe perhaps one of the reasons is because every time the conditions of the hostages are discussed in Western media or even in Israeli media, hostage families get very upset and start protesting even harder. And I assume maybe that was one of the reasons as to why they wanted to correct the record. Because they are getting a tremendous amount of pressure, as I've shown you, from hostage families to maintain a ceasefire and to get concessions and release the hostages that Hamas still currently holds. The issue is, that when Matthew Miller said this, he immediately went back on it. But Barak Ravid, the Axios reporter, reported on it as though Matthew Miller had said this as a matter of fact. And that journalistic malpractice, a game of telephone, if you will, turned into a news cycle of falsehood being covered as a matter of fact. This is the issue with American journalists operating as stenographers for the State Department. They hear anything and everything, and then they repeat it uncritically. It is a perfect demonstration of how things completely fall out of order, or rather, the system is designed in a way to churn out results such as this one. And there is a complete collapse of accurate reporting. I suspect that the rational reason as to why the IDF released this statement, which I will read to you right now, is because they do not want the hostage families to apply even more pressure to try and stop the merciless, ruthless bombing campaign that is being conducted in Gaza. We saw a collapse of that information funnel with the 40 beheaded babies lie that was told, or even babies being thrown into ovens that were objectively inaccurate, but went all the way up to the president. We saw it once again when Joe Biden said that he cannot trust the Gazan Health Ministry's reported numbers of casualties. The Israel Defense Forces says public discussions about the state of captives held in Gaza has moved into reckless territory, urging those responsible to knock it off. The conversation around the issue is irresponsible, inaccurate, and should be avoided, the IDF says in a rare statement. Remember, the IDF rarely ever issues statements like this, especially when it comes to correcting the American State Department. The pushback is apparent in response to comments from U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller Monday that Hamas terrorists likely held back on freeing female hostages because it did not want them to speak publicly about being subjected to rape and other sexual violence. Now, my questions for this, since the end to the ceasefire, has been, where is the American media? Where is the American media? Where is the Western media on this issue? We have this allergic response or a overall inability, for some reason, to even listen to words that are coming from official Hamas spokespersons. This is no way to do coverage. You do not have to agree with Hamas, but you still must hear what they're saying and verify their claims. What's very frustrating is, and this is important for all of you to understand, and I hope you can maintain a charitability when I mention this and not immediately assume that I have some secret secondary opinion here. Good journalism requires you to look at both sides of a conflict and their own spokespersons and what they're saying. Good journalism then requires you to verify that information that is being uttered from either side, and also match it against the rational objectives that either party has. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is, as far as when the ceasefire ended, after 7 days, there was very little coverage of what the Hamas spokesperson had said about why the ceasefire was ending, the collapse of the hostage negotiations. The only coverage I saw in Western media, for the most part, was simply the IDF statements being repeated uncritically and unconditionally. Okay? You have to hear from both sides in this situation. There's no way to understand exactly what's going on if you do not hear from the other side. You should still be very critical. This does not mean that you shouldn't, you should just take whatever the fuck Hamas spokespersons are saying and repeat it uncritically. You should be critical of what they're doing. And journalists, on the other hand, Hamas Piker added again, yes, I am Hamas Piker at your service for saying that in order to accurately assess a situation, you need to hear from all parties involved rather than closing your eyes and ears and going, la, 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 I can't hear you. Those guys are all brainless terrorists. Who cares what they're saying? I hate this championing of stupidity. I think, for far too long said I'm a stupid person, and now there are a lot of other people who are even stupider than I am coming in here and being like, no, you don't understand. We shouldn't do proper journalism. Anyway, I think the most reliable sources on this would be the Egyptian and Qatari mediators rather than either side. No, of course you have to hear from them as well. But my point was this. My point simply was this. And I've talked to some journalists about exactly what I'm mentioning. Some journalists that you all trust from very reputable outlets on specifically this, including Ryan Grimm, that I had this conversation with publicly a couple days prior. Okay? When the ceasefire ended, the Israeli side said it ended because Hamas refused to release female hostages that they had, going against the prior negotiations. At the time, I believe, and I'm going off the top of my dome here, Hamas had said there are 3 more women that they are willing to release, but then also they were willing to release a father that they had, but the rest of the female hostages that they had inside of Gaza were IDF soldiers, which have a separate negotiations process, that they were never going to release the IDF soldiers. Now, what you're supposed to do in this situation is look through the names of the people that have been released, find out if any IDF soldiers have been released or not, so you can verify whether or not Hamas has actually released IDF soldiers and they're simply not releasing these ones for some reason. What you're also supposed to do is look at what Hamas has said, because they also said that they were willing to release the elderly, and they were even willing to release a male hostage as well, not an underage, not a minor, but an enemy combatant aged male hostage, right? In order to continue the truce. None of this was ever mentioned in mainstream news for some reason in the Western world. I could not find a single Western article, and I looked all around. I tried to hunt down a single article that showed any of the things that I just mentioned, but it only pointed to the Israeli side's reasonings for why the ceasefire ended. And I do maintain the position that, of course, both sides have a rational interest in lying. Except if you look at the wants and needs and interests of both sides in this conflict, if you look at Hamas and Palestinian militants, they want to continue the truce. If you look at Israel and the outside pressures upon Israel from the Israeli public and the Knesset members that have said, no, we must continue the bombing, we should have never done a ceasefire at all, then the other side has an interest in continuing the bombing and ending the truce, whereas Hamas certainly still wants to maintain the truce at that point. The fact that this had not been discussed on these terms, the fact that nobody ever looked at that other side, was mind-boggling to me. This is simple journalism. It's journalism 101. You could have absolutely looked at Hamas's statements and then ran them against what they've done so far, whether they released IDF soldiers already or not, and I don't think they have, and verify whether or not the remaining hostages were actually in the IDF. But no one did that. There was a deal where Israel demanded 10 women and children, and they were going to go back to bombing. Hamas was able to do this. And then the next day, Israel started bombing again. No, Hamas said that they did not have any more women or children at their disposal to release as hostages beyond the 3. But then the rest they would make up with the elderly and even a man that is enemy combatant aged. It is a very sad state of affairs when the thing that I am mentioning is just basic reporting, like due diligence, basic reporting, basic conflict coverage. And people consider that to be like pro-Hamas. It's insane. It's not new, but it is a really sordid affair. Devastating that people are championing worse media in general. For journalism to be worse overall. Yes, the basic principle is this. Thank you. If Party A is telling you it's raining and Party B says it's not raining, good journalism doesn't stop at telling you what Party A and B said. They report if it's actually raining or not. They open the fucking window and look outside. Basic stuff. Real basic stuff. Eğlendiniz mi? Güzel. Baba sen siz verirsiniz, al telefonumla vereyim size, siz verin. Hayır unutmadım. Dün akşam koydum siparişi ama çok geçti. Evet. Tamam ben size vereyim telefonumu, alın siz neyse. Anyway. Here is White House's John Kirby talking about the IDF strategy to kill innocent civilians.
Not the Israeli Defense Forces strategy to kill innocent people. It's happening. I admit that. Each one's
Why are those guys overweight, though? A lot of Zionist accounts are mocking them for that and saying there's no shortage of food. What do you think, Hassan? What I think is looking at what is going on the ground. Someone being overweight does not necessarily mean that there's no shortage of food. I don't know how else to describe this. It's like the same weird genocide denial that people engage in when they go, the population size is increased in Gaza. It's like, yeah, people that have less oftentimes will have more children. People in developed nations, as a matter of fact, have an issue with this. Population increase diminishes, population size diminishes, and it's mostly an elderly population. Being in shape in America is a signifier that you're probably of a higher class rather than poor. Poor people are obese in America. Think about it a little bit more critically, and you will understand that, yes, there are always going to be overweight people. This doesn't mean that there's an abundance of food. My grandparents have had 10 children. Do you think they were popping off in Vietnam, chatter? Yeah. This is from Motaz. He reports, Israeli army arrested Palestinian civilians from a school in Beit Laiha in the north of Gaza Strip and forced them to take off their clothes and left them in the cold street before detaining them. They were all civilians. Confirming the IDF's claim that the detainees are resistance in an attempt to create a victory. This is a photo of a fellow journalist, Zia Al-Khalot, a reporter of the New Arab site with a group of captured civilians. Their fate is still unknown. On a population generally starved, the children are predisposed to overcompensate and retain lots of body fat because their parents were underweight. Yeah. Just sometimes you should look to information that you can easily find from your own backyard. Okay? For example, look to America. We have a massive obesity rate. And it's oftentimes the poorest people that are obese. We are not living in the fucking 14th century now where, like, gout is a rich man's disease. Okay? Food is readily available, and the shittier foods are actually the cheaper ones. The fattier foods. Yeah, it may mean that they don't have access to healthy food. What little they do have access to could be cheaper, more accessible food than food that is not as good for you. Exactly. Just think, man. Think critically. It's not that difficult to arrive at these conclusions on your own. I promise. I believe in you. I believe in your capacity to comprehend what is going on right in front of your eyes without, like, someone hand-holding you. Okay? Just like you know, at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. I'm going to run it now. I'm not even doing any fucking segues today.
It is not the Israeli Defense Forces strategy to kill innocent people. It's happening. I admit that. Each one's a tragedy. But it's not like the Israelis are sitting around every morning and saying, hey, how many more civilians can we kill today? Let's go bomb a school or a hospital or a residential building and cause civilian casualties. They're not doing that. They're trying to go after Hamas, and it's a very difficult task.
There has been so much reporting on the exact opposite of what John Kirby is saying here, that in a just world, which we are not living in one, but if there was a just world, if there was karma or any sort of like semblance of real rule-based international order, he would be in The Hague. He'd be tried for his continuation and his participation in Israel's war crimes and ethnic cleansing campaign. This is a lie. This is a lie. This is this is something that has been reported on. There is so much official statements that you can look to immediately understand what's going on in Israel. But, you know, the 972 magazine investigative reporting piece actually directly disproves everything he's saying here. That, yes, Israel is deliberately targeting Israel is deliberately targeting a civilian population. Deliberately, willingly, with full knowledge that they are taking down civilian buildings.
But it's not like the Israelis are sitting around every morning and saying, hey, how many more civilians can we kill today? Let's go bomb a school or a hospital.
No, that's precisely what they're saying. And that's precisely what they're doing.
Hospital or a residential building and cause civilian casualties. They're not doing that. They're trying to go after Hamas. And it's a
It's like getting 0% on an exam and being like, well, I tried my best. Like, no way. Even if you guess every question, you just look at 50%.
Very difficult task. When Hamas, oh, by the way, in addition to deliberately slaughtering people, is deliberately hiding themselves in residential buildings, in hospitals, in tunnels, putting the innocent people of Gaza directly in the crossfire.
Direct participation of mountain of including that disproves the lies Darby is telling here. The amount of rage I've been feeling watching the news and engaging with Zionists, I feel like my head's gonna explode. Direct participation of ethnic cleansing. There's a mountain of evidence, including the 972 magazine piece that disproves. Including the investigate. After calls for bombing Mexico from the Republicans for the last 5 years, how easy will it be for them to change the world Hamas with cartel and run shit in Mexico? I also saw something really interesting from Vincent Bevins. I don't know where this article was written originally, but he said something really interesting to me, at least. He said, I found Petro's linking of Gaza to the immediate climate catastrophe to be very powerful. I don't know what article this is from, but if first world governments and media can just explain away the deaths of tens of thousands of people actively killed by an ally, imagine how easily they can write off faraway natural deaths. Because climate change is going to and is already eviscerating the third world, places that, it was Gustavo Petro that wrote about it? Okay, president of Colombia. Or is it the Article 99 thing? What we see in Gaza is the rehearsal of the future. Colombian president at the UN Climate Summit says the genocide of Palestinians is similar to what awaits those who will flee southern countries due to the climate crisis. Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective that I had not considered, because I have talked about how the climate apocalypse is going to create a tremendous amount of displacement and a massive refugee crisis, as like we will harden our border control. So what you are seeing is the first stages of the migration and the refugee crisis that's occurring, right, in our southern border. It is going to be much, much worse. Millions and millions of people begging to enter the United States of America, getting ruthlessly slaughtered at our border. It is going to happen. Same with Europe, same with the developed world. Okay? Billions of people displaced as a consequence of anthropogenic climate change, natural disasters ripping through their lands, flooding, volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunamis. It's already been happening, but it will get much, much worse. This is something I've talked about quite a bit. But one thing I never really thought about was how they will manage it, how we in the first world will manage this death and devastation. And it turns out the way we will manage this death and devastation is quite simple. If you see, look, genocide and barbaric acts unleashed against the Palestinian people is what awaits those who are fleeing the South because of the climate crisis, he said at the COP28 climate summit in Dubai. He said anti-immigration behaviors of rich countries are already being seen, and the exodus caused by climate change will be responded to with a lot of violence and with barbarism itself. What we see in Gaza is the rehearsal of the future, he said. Petro said if rich countries do not stop consuming oil, coal, and gas, there will be billions of climate victims in countries that emit very little carbon dioxide who will migrate in search of fresh water. Because remember, one other thing that happens is the collapse of the agricultural industry in these nations as a consequence of climate change. These countries also do not have the infrastructure to combat the worst aspects of anthropogenic climate change, of course. One great example of this, it can be seen with the difference in how Texas dealt with its own mass flooding versus how Hurricane Irma destroyed Puerto Rico. One, of course, is an hyper-exploited territory that does not have its own autonomy. The other is a part of mainland USA with comparatively much better infrastructure. Why have large carbon-consuming countries allowed the systematic murder of thousands of children in Gaza? Because Hitler has already entered their homes, and they are getting ready to defend their high beliefs of carbon consumption and reject the exodus it causes, he said. Petro has been critical of Israel's bombing of the Gaza Strip, which has caused the deaths of more than 15,000 civilians. It was Hurricane Maria. Oh, it wasn't Irma. Sorry. I thought it was Irma. No? He has compared the situation in Gaza to Nazi concentration camps in World War II, a statement that has caused diplomatic tensions with Israel. Oh, Irma's the one who hit Houston. Irma and Maria. So, let me tell you something. These images are horrifying. They're unconscionable. They are it is a deliberate attempt to humiliate an entire population and to show the rest of the world and the rest of the people watching that they can get away with it. And America looks at that and says, no, go off kings. Now, let me explain something to you. The comparison between Nazi Germany, the Holocaust, and what is happening in Gaza is an important one to understand, because never again means never again. Never again doesn't mean never again for Jewish people only, or never again doesn't mean never again in Nazi Germany. Everywhere else, even if it is Jewish people that are the target of Holocaust or pogroms, then it's fine. It's just like it's never again just doesn't mean never again in 1938. Okay? But one thing that is important to understand, this is something I've stressed quite a bit. There's a reason for why we have Holocaust and genocide scholars, historians that have covered this stuff over and over and over again. And the reason for that is because we don't want it to happen again. The reason why we have international human rights is so that we can stop it before it gets out of hand. There is no magical number that you arrive at where it's like, all right, it's a genocide now. What do I mean by this, though? As far as the comparison with the Holocaust. Here is Nathan Tankis, who had a really good take, in my opinion. He says, we Jews wonder why the world did nothing as Nazis put us into concentration camps. Well, there were not photos of the true conditions of the concentration camps in 1941. This is something I've brought up before. Not only was there no photos of the concentration camps, but there was also propaganda to say that the concentration camps were actually simply a positive place. It was just a work camp, that no one was getting killed, that things weren't as bad. They lied. The Red Cross, as a matter of fact, participated in this lie as well. They had the international organs repeat their propaganda. Germans knew law? Absolutely. To a certain degree. Germans certainly knew. Definitely. Right? It's impossible to avoid that. However, one aspect of, I think, there's this mismatch with the way Holocaust survivors are treated in Israel. Something I've talked about before is that, like, there's this concept that, like, those who survived the Holocaust were weak, or those who went into the concentration camps were weak, that they simply just caved and capitulated, and that never again actually means we have to be strong, right? This, like, interesting Western chauvinistic, or rather jingoistic attitude that Israelis sometimes hold on to. And it actually comes from a lack of understanding what happened in the Holocaust, because there were people who absolutely fought back. There were Jews who absolutely fought back. But beyond that, many of the Jews that were being put into concentration camps did not know what fate was going to fall on them. They did not know that. They brought their clothes with them, for example. They brought some of their personal. They brought some of their things with them, thinking that they were simply going into a limited concentration camp, when in fact they were going to a death camp. right? Or they thought that they were being relocated. This was important. This is important to understand because that lack of knowledge in real time allowed such severe atrocities to continue, right? What? I don't know what this person is saying. Anyway. That is what allowed such atrocities to continue. However, this is not 1941 anymore. In 2023, we have photos. We have live streams. We can see, we have a personal connection to those who are trapped in the open air prison of Gaza being bombed into oblivion. We know what's going on. We know about it in real time. And yet people are in America are talking about college campuses. The denial and justification of far too many Jewish Americans engage in for the genocide happening in Gaza is on a far more profound and earth-shattering scale than the most vile anti-Semitic America Firster in 1941. I don't want to ever hear any of this wondering ever again. When I see people stripped of their boxers with soldiers patrolling around them, knowing that they've been starved, deprived of water, and put through the unimaginable for 2 months, all I can see is the Nazi Holocaust. Those are the images I was taught to look for. That's why so many people, like Bosnians, have been losing their fucking minds on the timeline, going like, this literally happened. This happened in identical ways not that fucking long ago, and it's happening again, and people are championing it again. I don't know how anyone can look at things like this, look at any of the most basic information about what is happening, and not have the alarm bells instilled in us at a very young age going off at full blast. Why did they teach us those things? My Jewish American education taught me, apparently completely against its intention, to identify fully with the Palestinian, to see myself in a sorrowful Palestinian eye, to feel their pain as my own. For we experienced the Nazi Holocaust and want no one subjected to the same. This is something that Michael Jamal Brooks, rest in power, has said as well. He always used to say, my Jewish values taught me to oppose apartheid. My Jewish values taught me to oppose the Holocaust. I was taught to valorize resistance. I was raised from a very young age singing Zotni Kien Mal, the song of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, written in the Vilna Ghetto. I can't tell you how many times we sung it. People who do not oppose the Israeli genocide should never speak at it again. To be fair, they're obviously tripping them down to make sure they're not armed, not for humiliation. The comparison is quite wild. Oh my God. This dude is still in here, dude. Brother, I hope you will one day recognize and have the shame in your heart that what you are doing in here is actually not working and is only making you look like a fucking clown. Okay? I mean, why is that guy wrong, lol? How do you not understand? Is there no other way to apprehend and assess whether or not someone has weapons on them without stripping them and lining them up? What are you talking about? Especially as we showed that there is no evidence that these are Hamas militants to begin with, and more evidence to suggest that they are simply Palestinian civilians that were rounded up from refugee camps. Please exercise a little bit of critical thinking, chatters, please. What do you mean? How can they know they aren't Hamas militants, though? This is a ridiculous question to ask. The standard of proof is on the Israeli military to make an assertion ahead of time, not by... There's a reason why dragnets are illegal, chatter. What are you talking about? You are defending You are defending, once again, collective punishment. This is inhumane. What you are defending is inhumane. You can try and justify it by saying, sorry, I'm scared because those guys are Palestinian and there's a likelihood that they are Hamas, so it justifies treating them this way, okay? But we are supposed to be living in a civilized world. Innocent until proven guilty. This is like a foundational principle of liberal democracy and the criminal justice system that operates within liberal democracies. The problem here is that you can never put yourself in the shoes of those who are victim to this. This is a war zone. You're applying Western standards for normal times. No, this is not a war zone. First of all, there are rules of engagement within a war zone as well, and that is actually a clear-cut violation of rules of engagement in a war zone. That's not a war zone, though. That is an ethnic cleansing. That's a concentration camp where there's ethnic cleansing ongoing. Not only are you wrong, but you're doubly wrong. But even in a war zone, Abu Ghraib happened, and that was declared a war crime as well. Punishments were issued to American soldiers for their participation in the torturous conditions in Abu Ghraib. So yes, you can't get away with doing whatever the fuck you want in a war zone. After all, that is literally what the Nazis also said. Every genocidaire has said exactly those words throughout history. It's a war zone. It had to happen. Armenian genocide is a great example of this as well. It's a war zone. It has to happen. We have rules for a fucking reason. I can't even talk about how those rules are not even far enough because people don't even want to abide by the rules and standards that we are supposed to uphold. I like that you said Western standards, by the way. Western standards have shown their asses time and time again. All right. Anyway, so there's that. The chorus in the last tweet is a part of a small circle of Israeli Bundes. The song is now a Palestinian anthem. I don't care what anyone else says. It belongs to the Palestinian resistance. Jewish Zionists and others dishonor it by letting their lips touch it. Palestinians will resist to their last breath, just as the European Jews valorized in shoals across the United States did. These disgusting fools who ask why they resist when it's futile and just going to make things worse have forgotten themselves and our history. I dare you to read these words and find it impossible to not think of Palestinian resistance. It's impossible to anyone whose heart has not turned cold stone, he says. I don't know, man. You never forget you have to be as chill as you possibly can in the face of like people directly denying war crimes that they can see in front of their own eyes and try to dehumanize and extend the ongoing dehumanization that they're watching. But I have to keep my cool every single time. You know what I mean? Which rules of war is being violated? You cannot apprehend a civilian population in Dragnet and humiliate them and rob them of their clothes. That is not a thing that you can do. Israel also, under international law, as a belligerent occupier, does not have a right to defend itself against Gaza. And even if Israel had a right to defend itself, let's say it's a foreign nation that they're fighting against, Israel's targeting and its civilian casualty calculations as collateral damage have gone far beyond what is even remotely legally permissible. So every single step of the way, Israel has been engaging in war crimes and regular violations of international law. Not that you care. Okay? And you, on the other hand, keep going back to the 40 beheaded babies conversation once again. Over and over again. Because you are not interested in the truth. This is just simply bad faith posturing. Israel's also using white phosphorus. Documented by the Human Rights Watch. Anyway. Stop complaining and post your sources, and I believe you've misunderstood what I have said regardless. Okay? The baby in the oven story was fake news, part of a disinformation blitz used to justify the IDF's ongoing slaughter of thousands of Palestinian civilians, including today, Rafat al-Arar. Here's Rafat al-Arar joking about whether or not an Israeli baby burned alive in an oven was cooked with or without baking powder. Yeah, it was fucking false. And Barry Weiss had repeated this falsehood, okay? And of course, no punishments came of that. The babies being cooked alive in an oven was... I mean, it is real. It did happen. It happened in 1948 during the Nakba. It happened in Deir Yassin. But something to consider is that houses were burned to the core while people were inside. Do you object to that? Of course not. Baby in the oven, maybe, but houses were burned. You do know that, right? Yeah, no, I did. I actually reported on it at the time. I'm assuming that you weren't here. Yeah. Burned by grenades and fuel, making a deadly combination, and burned by tank fire as well. Consistent shelling. In some of the kibbutz, as far as the information is readily available to us from GoPro footage from Hamas and other Palestinian militants, grenades were tossed inside of houses. Houses were lit on fire deliberately. And yes, the people inside those houses burned. Some of the other houses, according to Yasmin Parat and other survivors from the kibbutzim, tell a different story as well. That some of the houses were exploded with, houses were exploded with tanks. Now, this doesn't change the reality, the atrocities. Majority civilian casualties in the hands of... I was actually in some of the kibbutzim, not that it matters, but the consistent shelling is another attempt to derail the convo. Those were one-off occasions. Well, it's funny that you're saying this because I am also repeating what you are saying. But you do not care about the truth. You're only in here to stir shit. What do I mean by this? Because if you did care about the truth, or if you cared about my coverage of the matter, you would know that I have actually routinely criticized those who try to make it seem like IDF killed all of their own civilians and that Hamas were perfect in their operation and the way that they conducted themselves. That is a lie. It was a slaughter of civilians, majority civilians, which is a war crime and also an act of terror, by my estimation. That's what happened on October 7th. IDF's responsibility of the casualties, civilian casualties specifically, of course, is not the majority at all. I'm not saying that at all. It is not a way to derail. It is a way to show an accurate assessment of the events. You asked me about what happened and how the houses caught on fire, and I told you, but you're upset that maybe some of them might be Israeli tank fire. The difference here is that I'm not pretending that it was Israel that killed its own citizens across the board. I never said that. You made that assertion because you come in here and you think, oh, this guy is pro-Hamas. I'm going to catch him. I'm going to catch him in a lie or something like that. Go defend your fucking country by killing some children, okay? How about you do that instead? Instead of fucking typing away in my chat. You sick fuck. Stop saying wrong things. You are just anti-Semitic. Point to anything that I've said wrong thus far. And we can have an honest conversation about it.
Damn, this guy's good.